Welcome, dear listeners, to the Dish with Dina podcast. I'm so happy to have you join us. Today, I'll be speaking with Dina Wiltshire. Dina, a second-degree undergrad, activist, and citizen of the world, shares with me her food journey from Barbados to the Bronx. So sit back, enjoy the conversation, and let's dish. Welcome, Dina Wiltshire, to the Dish with Dina podcast. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to speak with me. How's it going?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It's been going really well. I'm enjoying the weather a little bit. Still social distancing and all that, but definitely going outside and getting my sun and all the good stuff. How are you?
It's good. It's good. That's right. We will definitely make note that most of these early recordings are taking place during 2020 when we were in the middle of a pandemic and having to remain socially distanced and or somewhat isolated. So I'm glad that you're venturing outdoors and getting some much needed fresh air and vitamin D. As I've been doing with the last interview guests that I've had on here, we always start with, how did we meet? How did we come to know each other? You and I don't go back that far. So do you want to share with our listeners how we came about to meet each other?
Yes, actually. And we can get into this a little more, but we did meet at Lehman College, where you're a professor and also a nutritionist. And so I went there for help for my nutrition and also to just see you on a medical platform.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So that I went there to use your services and your knowledge as a nutritionist. And that's how we met.
Right. So a lot of campuses, or I should say maybe at least CUNY campuses that I think have on campus student health services, like the student health center and wellness room and all these things. And so I was hired as an on-campus dietitian and plugged in one day a week to meet with pretty much anybody that goes there. But you're a student, right? You're not part of faculty employee setting. You're a student on campus as well.
Yes, I am absolutely a student.
And what are you majoring in, if you can tell everybody that as well?
So this is actually my second degree, and I love to say that because it just feels really nice. But it's my bachelor's, and this degree is in political science.
Poli-sci. Okay.
Yes.
Which I'm going to assume some of our discussion will touch upon that coming up soon. So I'm excited to talk to you about that.
Absolutely.
But let's go back a little bit further then. I am so interested in learning about people's earliest food memories, their backgrounds, wherever they grew up. And I know you have quite a lot of stuff in your own world. You're very well traveled. And so tell us a little bit about your earliest childhood memories of what your food issues or food dynamic, family dynamic was. And then we'll talk a little bit more about kind of how that led you into whatever direction you're in now.
Awesome. So yes, I think that's a very good place to start for most people or all people. Me specifically, I was born in New York in the Bronx. And that was because my mom was traveling here to visit my grandmother, and she was very pregnant at the time. And so I was just born here. But my family, my mom and my dad, they lived in Barbados at the time, which is a small Caribbean island where Rihanna's from. Most people know it, if I mention that. But yeah, and so it is there where I really grew up and really learned about food and was really exposed to food. I'm also Indian. So my mom is Indian from Guyana, India. We're Indo-Caribbean. And my dad is mulatto. He's black and white from Barbados. He's a Bajan native. And so my food really comes from those two places. But my uncle, who lived with my parents, and they all lived together when I was a baby and I was growing up, he lived there for a short while. He really was the person that kind of exposed me to food and had me in the kitchen when I was very young, tasting and trying and doing all that fun stuff. But generally speaking, my family on both sides, they're very involved in cooking and baking and just food in general. So I've had the pleasure of really being allowed to experiment and taste and have my taste buds travel the world in a sense, because we were very liberal with allowing children in the kitchen and tasting things and trying things and cooking and experimenting. And I know a lot of people don't normally get that, but we
Hmm.
were, I was fortunate to have that. And so my earliest food memories definitely come from my uncle and definitely come from Barbados being a place of lots of natural food growing abundantly. So um, before I even get into cooking, raw foods for me, which play a significant role in my life now,
Hmm.
were very important. So my mom, there's big market that they call it in Barbados, and we go down to the market basically, and it's all local vendors, and they're literally like what you think of in a village mentality, a village like
Hmm.
lifestyle, where people just have their carts and their little baskets, and they whatever they're growing at home or on their farm, because people do have like huge plantations and farms, they bring to the market and they sell it there. And so you get fresh herbs, you get fresh vegetables, you get fresh fruits, you get all that good stuff, and you can haggle. And so you get into the culture of haggling and knowing how much food is worth, really, and what good food looks like and smells like, and versus a bad fruit or a bad vegetable, or something that's about to go rotten but not rotten yet. And so you learn that at a very young age in the Caribbean, when you're exposed to that marketplace. And so and then you also get like specialty, and going into cooked food now, you get like
Yeah.
specialty bites at the market that you won't be able to get in a supermarket anywhere, that vendors make, just for Saturday market. So you go
Yeah.
and that's just very like that molded the way I viewed food, and definitely the way I learned to taste, and it opened my taste buds, I should say. I once again mentioned that I'm from an Indian background on my mother's side, and
Hmm.
so we knowing just what we generally know about Indian food, some people call it the original plant-based diet. And so
Right.
that being said, I was always made fun of as a child for having like the being the one child that didn't like vegetables and didn't like a plethora of greens specifically. I don't like soft things, right? And so I learned
Right.
that very early too. Like I loved crackers and crunchy things and nuts, but I hated like bananas and avocados and like different, even though I loved fruit, I didn't like
Hmm.
very soft, mushy things, right? And
Right.
so that was something that I learned very early about myself. And in the market, people are really nice. They let you try things before you buy it, so you can decide if you want to buy it. You can try something if you don't know what it tastes like at all. You can smell things, you
Yeah.
can touch things, and so there's so much learning, so much learning going on without even being taught, really. And so those were very like early memories that I have, um,
Yeah.
just being in the market, and then going on to cooked food, really. My uncle, one of my favorite things to smell even to this day, right, is kielbasa sausage, right? It's and that's funny and it's ironic because
It is funny.
it's very
Yeah, for me to talk
ironic, right?
about.
And we'll get into that later, and why we're laughing, but
I do.
we'll surprise the listeners with that later.
Yeah. I do.
But
Kielbasa sausage
right,
roasting.
it's and it's so like it was like a treat because we're living in this Caribbean island where you don't really get things that are not locally made or
Right.
locally sourced, or at least that's what I was exposed to. And then you have like my uncle just making kielbasa sandwich sausages with onions and sweet peppers, and you get
Mm.
with a side of toast. And so Barbados, for those people that don't know, is was a British colony. So the idea of a traditional breakfast still rings true, right?
Hmm.
So we have like your baked beans as a side, which I also didn't like because they were mushy. Um, and you get like toast, and you'll have like plantains, which is such a Caribbean like food, right? Plantains are like a
Yes.
Caribbean staple. I still to this day love plantains, and even though I'm not like Barbados is an English British country, we when I moved to the Bronx, because I lived in Barbados for most of my childhood till I was 11. I moved
Right.
to the Bronx at that point. When I moved here, and there was such a high Latin population here, and I knew that they called sweet plantains, which I love, maduro. I
Hmm.
immediately changed my vocabulary. I was like, I don't know what this plantain is. I just know maduro now, and I love maduro, and I say that to everybody.
That's your staple
That
now.
is my
Dana, I'm
staple.
gonna I'm going to interrupt you one sec because I'm scribbling like a fiend with so many questions. And to follow up on this, if you don't mind, can we venture back into a second? Because one of the, I'm kind of going to be a little bit all over the place, but I was following some of what you were saying, going back to the discussion of allowing children in the kitchen and allowing them to taste and smell and touch and develop their own senses of what their preferences are, right? So you were saying mushy, not mushy, and different smells and flavors. That's one of the things, as you were saying before, I'm an adjunct lecturer also on the campus at Lehman College, and one of our classes is an undergrad 200 level course in food, society, and health. And one of the things we talk about is, kids might not know how to handle a knife and, do the stuff on the stove, but they can even be involved in some way just in that kitchen environment, and then exposing them to not just your own traditional cooking, but allowing them to come to the market with you, allowing them to speak and, interact with the vendors. And kind of like you said, the haggling thing was cracking me up. I could just picture, 8-year-old you being like, that's too much, or whatever in that case. So I really like hearing that, because I think, we tend to say, well, kids are kids, or they might be picky eaters. But I think if we allow that opportunity to really have them flourish in that environment, if they're able to do so, if the people who they're working with, in your case, obviously you had your family, but also specifically your uncle, I think that's really cool that you had that in such an early age. And I spoke a little bit this in my intro episode, where I was kind of raised by my grandma with my mom and dad as well. We lived in a 2-family house. And so a lot of us were just, back and forth, up and down. And I was constantly touching and feeling and helping make pasta every Sunday and doing those things. So I love that you had that experience. I'm going to stop with that unless you want to add anything else, and I'll go on to my other question.
No, absolutely. I will ramble on. Please stop me whenever you feel necessary.
I love it.
Thank you.
And the other thing I wanted to ask too, so in addition to what you were saying, the local vendors at the big market, did you have, or did your neighborhood have backyards, gardens? Like, did you plant and grow your own things as well? And then was there also like a supermarket, or did you always just go to these open, markets with the vendors there?
So I was, once again, very fortunate to have this giant house. And of course I was a child, so I thought my house was giant. But I had this giant house with like a huge backyard, and we had breadfruit trees, we had pepper bushes, and we had cherry trees and a guava tree, which is, by the way, my favorite fruit. Well, actually, it's a debate between that and mangoes, but yeah, we had lots of fruit trees.
I won't tell.
We had fruit trees, and at some point too, we had live animals. Like we had rabbits, and we had, and I've had rabbit, and that's a very, that's a delicacy, it's not something that you would eat very often, but, so we had lots of, and it was commonplace. Like I said before, like vendors go down to the market and they kind of sell what they have in their yard or whatever. And they may not have like a huge yard or a huge plantation. People may grow things out of pots and things like that. But generally speaking, in the Caribbean, there aren't many apartments. Most people are living in houses that were passed down by their family members, or that they built themselves, depending on their socioeconomic status. And so most people did have a yard, whether it be big or small, and most people do grow at least like one tree or one plant. And it may not necessarily be something that you can grab fruit off of, or any type of food, but they do have, like, it's very normal to have plants and have like life around you. It's so Caribbean. It's very ingrained in us. And even now in like my 2x4 little apartment in New York, I have plants everywhere. I regrow cuttings and things like that. So yes, in the Caribbean, it's very like commonplace to have vegetables and fruits in your backyard. And even if it's just for yourself and your family and not for sale, and we definitely had that. We definitely had, like I said, like breadfruit trees. And I think we had a mango tree, and we had, we grew peppers for sure. And I remember that because these are bird peppers, and they're named after that because I think the birds like eat them often. Like they just pick them, and they're very small. They look like cherries. And my brother ate one because I told him it was a cherry. Obviously I was a bad kid, and his mouth was clearly on fire, but now he has this like super high tolerance for peppers that I don't have. And, And so we had like a very like hands-on,
Yeah.
childhood when it came. Yeah.
Experiences. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
That is so, so cool. I was thinking back to what you're saying in relation to, because I didn't go too much into detail in some of my own introductory discussions, but we had a backyard garden. We lived in two different places when I was a child, but somewhat close by to each other. I remember a fig tree and a cherry tree. And then obviously in the garden, we had like basil and tomato. And then when we went shopping, we would go kind of like into town to these very specific vendor establishments. So there was the pork store, there was the cheese store. Everybody had a very specific
Right.
thing that they were selling. Versus nowadays, you have Whole Foods or giant supermarkets where it's just literally one-stop shop, and you can even get clothes in some
Right.
of these places too, depending. And I miss that. I miss those artisanal small businesses. I mean, thank goodness in New York City, we have a lot of that available to us, but sometimes there's accommodations to be made. Sometimes things aren't available, or they're a little bit costlier than obviously going into the larger stores. So you're bringing me back down my own memory lane with all
Oh,
of this discussion in your childhood too. So thank you for sharing
absolutely.
that. So if you don't mind, then let's shift a little bit and do start talking about how those experiences, whether they happened when you were in Barbados or when you did move to the States, how that then defined you and your current approach to what you eat, what you do, your healthful lifestyle, those types of things. If there were any positive or negative influences and how you kind of shifted and worked around that. So go ahead. You have
All
at it now.
right. Thank you.
I'll open the floor.
Thank you. Yeah, so I think being able to grow with food and experience food at a very young age allowed me to be adventurous with food. So a lot of people will say like, oh, you don't try things, you don't try new things, and that's really not true. I've just learned early what I like and what I don't like, and properties that I like and what I don't like in food. And so I don't have
Mm-hmm.
to try things really to know if I'll like it or not like it. And so because of that, I think there is like a kind of a gap when I encounter new things with friends and family members, and there is this like moment of like, well, you don't, like I said, you don't try things. And so I've done a lot of experimenting at a younger age, which allowed me to define my palate and understand myself, and so I can make those decisions. Whereas
Yeah.
people will say like, well, I don't know if I'll like something, let me try it. I can say ahead of time like, no, I know I won't like this because it's mushy, or I know I won't like this because
Right.
this. And so it's allowed me to be picky. I am a picky eater, but I'm also
Mm-hmm.
well-rounded. Like I know what I like out of food, so I can go look for something that has these properties, that is green or is orange or is purple, because we need the whole rainbow in our plate sometimes. I'm able
Mm-hmm.
to be picky. I'm able to be successful in my pickiness and be nutritious with my pickiness. The transition really from moving to New York, the hardest thing I would say for me was the change of food. So in the Caribbean, you get this variety that you don't get in this part of the world, right? In this part of New York, in this
Right.
part of America, um, we aren't we aren't the tropics, so we don't get certain things year
Mm-hmm.
round. We don't get certain things
Right.
fresh, like freshly picked, because we're a city, and we don't have a lot of
Right.
gardens or places where you can necessarily have vendors. And we do have a lot of local vendors, but they're not necessarily selling local food. And so that's also like a
Right.
challenge I have. And having like guavas, like I can never find ripe guavas anywhere. All our guavas are imported. And so because guavas turn ripe and they turn spoiled, like they transition very quickly between stages, they're shipped when they're green. And so they will never reach proper
Mm-hmm.
maturity, and they will never taste the way that a fresh guava off the tree will taste when it's ripe. And so
Right.
I've learned to really have to learn new foods, and try to source old food in different places. And that's caused me
Mm-hmm.
to like personally gone out and adventure into different neighborhoods and see where I can find local food, because there's a lot of food from Barbados, from Guyana, that I can't find
Mm-hmm.
anywhere. And so that's very taxing on my palate, because now I have to try to get all that nutrition that I would get out of these various foods out of like a select amount of food now. And so I think that that's also, I do miss the market as well. I do miss being able to go and meet vendors and haggle for food, you know, and once you know
Yeah.
someone well enough, they start giving you stuff for free too sometimes. Yeah, absolutely. Um,
So it's a culture shock at first, but then you do find some way to accommodate the things that you're looking for with what you have. I mean, obviously there's going to be probably like the mourning period, MOUR,
yes,
and the mourning period of things that you probably will never find
absolutely.
here or that don't necessarily mimic exactly what you're looking for. Because of the different food supply and the different things, the food ways that we have in America. And like you said, if they're going to be available, it might be imported. And by the time they get here, not so much with the flavor. And so
Absolutely.
you kind of have to pick and choose. So keep walking us through some stuff then. What is your path right now as far as your own health journey goes? And tell us a little bit about that too, because now we can kind of get into maybe some of the things that came up in our discussions previously about, what you are looking for as far as food is concerned and what some of your current taste buds are going for and how you are managing your own health and
Okay,
wellness
great.
journey.
So,
Yeah.
my mom, when I think, I don't know when she did this because my grandmother raised me after 11. So when I moved to New York, I lived with my grandmother who is completely Indian. And so but she's Indo-Caribbean, right? So she does make like her rice and peas,
Mm-hmm.
and we still make this thing called macaroni pie, which is a Bajan dish, right? It's completely from Barbados. And, but it's baked mac and cheese essentially, but it's made with a roux. And so, also, in addition to all of this, my
Yes.
aunt is a chef by trade. Like she's gone to school, yeah, and she's
Ah.
become a chef, and she's had her own restaurant and in Barbados, and like she's done a lot of things with food that has allowed me to also like experience new tastes and new flavors and learn techniques
Mm-hmm.
because she's had like the scholastic
Mm-hmm.
aspect of it. She's been able to teach me how to make a roux. She's been able to show me how to bake a mac and cheese from complete scratch. And so she's also been able to like lend that knowledge, whatever she's learned, to our family. And so that's influenced how our family now makes food, which is a huge deal for us, um, because now I can't get that food anywhere else. Like and everybody's families like that. Like we
Right.
all have family recipes and things like that. But I think ours is so complex
Yes.
because it comes from all of these different walks of life that it's just like I've written down recipes and I've done all these things because we just it is what a family recipe is, right? Like it has all this history.
It really is.
And
Right. Right. And it is passed down. It's not, I mean, back in the day, nobody's documenting this on a
right,
Google
exactly.
document. It's not accessible. It's just word of
And
mouth,
right, you're
hand me
just
down, and you're experiencing. And then ingredients change. I believe ingredients change over the course of time. Sometimes you can't
exactly.
find the thing that you used to use, or that manufacturer doesn't no longer carries that particular, canned condensed milk or whatever it is that you're doing.
And
So things
flavors
can,
then change
uh,
because of
mhm.
vegetables and fruits and the other ingredients not being substituted or not being available. Yep. And so that
Exactly.
happens a lot too here. Like
Exactly.
we in Barbados, we get even a specific brand of cheese, which is New Zealand cheddar, Anchor cheddar cheese. And it's literally the best thing since sliced bread. Like I will eat slices and slices and slices of that cheese. Like when I come back from Barbados, I bring blocks of cheese with me. Like people bring sand, I bring cheese. Like I need this
Yeah.
cheese, you know? And so yeah, so just to touch on my family a little bit more, like my mom is a raw vegan. I don't remember when she made that
Okay.
transition in her life, but my first real encounter with that was when I was 18 and I went back to Barbados to live there for a year. And I lived with my mom, and she was a raw vegan. And so she was not having, for people who aren't really versed in the food world, like a
Hmm.
vegan is someone who doesn't
Hmm.
eat any byproducts of animals, which goes down to even having honey. She won't even have honey. And then a
Hmm.
raw vegan on top of that is someone who doesn't eat cooked food often or at all. And
Right.
so she that's her path in life. And so even now being in America, so she's lived in Barbados her whole life until like a few years ago. She moved to New York to be with us and to, just be with her family. Um, she
Yeah.
she now eats a lot more like widely produced food and like processed food, vegan food still, but she's not as raw as she used to be.
Right.
And that I do attribute to the fact that, New York may not have as much fresh vegetables and fruits available, or locally grown fresh veg and fruits. And
Hmm.
also, like, my mom is very particular about genetically modified food. So she's educated me a lot. And like I said, in 2012, when I went to go live with her, she opened my eyes a lot to her food journey and what food really is and how food is supposed to be for your body and what nutrition really looks like. And so we get to this point, of really understanding where what the point of food is and how it serves its purpose in our body. And so she won't
Right.
eat genetically modified food, and she won't have things that maybe like tomatoes that aren't heirloom tomatoes. Like, she's very specific. And she also taught me, like, you know, nightshade food and how often we should eat mushrooms as women, and soy may be not necessarily something that's good for us all the time. And so like, and that's lent to a lot of my mom was very important in my food journey, in terms of
Yeah.
lending me her knowledge and her experience. And she just taught me to be very like vigilant, like pay attention to how your body reacts to what you eat. Just do that.
Well, yeah, that's for sure. I was going to say, obviously, because I work with such a wide variety of patients and clients, not everybody has obviously the same tastes and the access to certain things, but that is definitely one thing that I tend to tell people. As flexible as you can be with what you have accessible to you, try to honor how your body reacts to things. So if I don't tend to term things like good or bad foods. I think all foods play a role in something. But if you happen to have like a violent reaction to dairy products, perhaps your body is telling you you have an intolerance to that. So, you can obviously go the gamut of getting tested for things, but certain foods you might be able to live without. Now, if we're doing that, and I think you and I might have had this discussion too, if there are certain foods that kind of come off your plate literally, it's just a matter of what nutritional value
Right.
did they give you that you now kind of
Right.
have to replace in that way. So if we don't do dairy, there's no problem with that. We're just missing calcium and maybe some vitamin D, but we can find those nutrients in other things. So I don't really force people to eat a certain way. I feel like you have to honor yourself. But, in your case too, because you do have a very special regimen in things. Do you find that to be sometimes a little bit problematic or challenging of trying, or do you not care so much, like, well, listen, this is what works and I'm eating kind of the same thing day after day, but I'm designing it in a way with different flavors and spices and the way that I'm cooking things, that it doesn't feel like it's the
Right.
same
So
food all the
jumping
time.
into where I am now in my food journey, right? Because I kind of didn't
Yeah.
answer that question.
That's okay.
So I am a vegetarian, but I'm a vegan vegetarian. And so that's like, I usually use that with people who know more about food. Generally speaking, I just tell people that I'm
Hmm.
vegetarian, but I consider myself a vegan vegetarian, which means that I am vegan up until cheese. Cheese is the only thing, the only
Okay.
like animal byproduct that I use. Like, I don't even use honey,
Right.
like I am very conscious about how things are made. And that goes for my entire lifestyle. Like, I will not buy silk because of how it's made. It's not, like, I will not buy
Okay.
leather. Like, it is a lifestyle change for me. And so even though I've gone into this completely like listening to my body, because and I'll tell you, and I think I
Right.
have before too, the story of how I really became vegetarian. It was very
Hmm.
natural. It was not forced. And I don't also believe in forcing yourself to do anything. Like, your body, you just have to listen to yourself. Your body will tell you what it needs, what it doesn't want, what it likes, and what you need at any given time. And so you kind of just have to listen to that and be very present in your body and listen to it. And so, yeah, so like I said, I'm a vegan vegetarian. I eat vegetarian, I eat plant-based every meal all the time, except when it comes to cheese. Sometimes I give a little into butter as
Right.
well, here and there, but I do not drink milk. I don't do yeah, I don't use yogurt. I'll have like
Yogurt.
plant-based yogurt,
Hmm.
which is actually an acquired taste, but I got used to it and I love it now with like granola and stuff. I'm also very picky with the brands that I use, because if I have to make sure my ingredients are genuine ingredients that are giving me my nutritional intake. Because, like, if I'm
Hmm.
taking a bunch of things out of my diet, like you mentioned, I have to make sure I'm still getting those nutritious like details. And
Right.
so that's very like, that's I don't find that it's very hard. I think for me, the biggest challenge is not being able to access the plethora of fruits and vegetables that I'm used to, because like Bajan cherries, right? They're world renowned. They have like, I
Mm-hmm.
think they're the highest plant, that the highest thing that has like, I think vitamin C or antioxidants in it or something like that. And that's something I
Right,
used to
right,
like pick off. We had a cherry tree, so I was eating cherries all the time. And
right.
so you're running around in a sunny country with all these fruits and vegetables. I went to college and I used to pick fruits off the tree and eat them, and so like when I went to college in Barbados. And so it's not
Yeah.
it's not so much of um oh well, your diet has changed, how do you deal with that. It's more of like, I have less
Mm-hmm.
access to fresh food, so that's my real problem. It's
Mm-hmm.
not a
Mm-hmm.
and so I'll walk you through now like the journey of how I became vegetarian. um and so
Yeah.
I'm here in New York, and I loved steaks and burgers. Like I still like will smell a good steak or a burger and be like, and so I ate everything. And Barbados, we love pork, right? Like it's just like this, like we have our own pigs, and like ham is such a big deal, especially around Christmas. And so like
Right.
food isn't, we don't sit there and like bash any particular type of food. And I understand why and how people do that. But I don't personally subscribe to that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't sit there and say like, well, this is terrible. You probably shouldn't eat that. I just want to make sure like you're also
Right.
getting all the nutritious things you need. If your body's not doing anything crazy when you're eating something, you're probably fine. Like we're all made up of different things. And like you said, we all respond differently. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so I
Mm-hmm.
lived here in New York and I was eating everything that I can get my hands on. I did transition when I was younger. I ate a lot of processed food because it was easy to make, and Hot Pockets were a great breakfast when you're riding the train and the bus in the morning, and so that was my life for a while.
Okay.
And while I was going to school, but I came home and I would make food, or there would be food cooked already, like, whoever's home gets home first cooks. And
Mm-hmm.
but like as a transitioning teen and into my adulthood, I was very like fast foodie, and that may not be buying something, that might just be like popping a freezer pizza into the oven or whatever.
Right.
And so that was very much my lifestyle. And then, like I said, at 18, I encountered like this vegan lifestyle with my mom. And so when I lived with her, dairy got cut out of my diet completely because she had dairy replacements. So
Mm-hmm.
she had the
Mm-hmm.
milk, and she had like the almond milk, and she had yogurt, and she had vegan butter. And so she had all these things, and I'm using that, like when I'm making pancakes in the morning, and when I need butter, she doesn't eat peanuts because they're so genetically modified. And so I'm eating almond butter instead. And so your palate kind of changes by force because of what was present there for me at that time. And so coming back to New York,
Right.
I'm like, well, I don't like how milk tastes anymore. And I loved milk in Barbados. We have this like ultra pasteurized,
Yeah.
shelf safe milk that we drink. And I love like the vanilla flavor. And even though we have cows and we have fresh milk, that
Right.
was kind of like what I grew up on. And, like at that time, my mom and my dad weren't very like influenced and impacted by what they ate necessarily. They were just local, and they ate what was local and what was available. And
Right.
that just for me conveniently happened to be fresh food and fresh vegetables often. But yes, you did have the ultra pasteurized milk and juice boxes and all these things, but you're still picking stuff off your trees, and you're still eating stuff that are
Off
like
the trees.
local. But so you do have like kind of like a balance. And I think coming from that also taught me that you don't necessarily have to be so strict in your diet. As long as you're feeding your body nutritiously, you be healthy in a way. And
Mm-hmm.
so um
Right. It can be simple. It can be simple and easy and natural stuff. And you're bringing up some good points there too, because for people who are curious about transitioning into a vegan or vegetarian lifestyle, or hearing the term that is going around a lot right now,
right,
which is plant-based, right? Plant-focused foods. Just incorporating that when we're talking about those things, we're primarily talking about whole foods, natural foods, things that you kind of recognize, things that if they were
absolutely,
on a tree, you could pick them off and eat them. There's definitely processed foods also available in the vegan world. There are, those substitute meat
right,
products, the substitute dairy products. So it's possible that even with transitioning to what seems like a healthier approach to stuff, people could maybe not
Absolutely.
make
You
the
could be
right
a
choices
unhealthy,
or
yeah, you could be a completely
overdo it.
unhealthy vegan, you know? You could. My mom, when she first
Right.
moved here, because
Yeah.
vegan processed food was so available in the Caribbean, it's very expensive to import. And then they also have a very small population of people that are strictly, they have the Rastas and they have like,
Mm-hmm.
and so the Rastas are almost like exclusively the vegans there. And so when you do find like someone that's not Rastafarian and they are vegan or they're plant-based,
Mm-hmm.
they immediately, like, I remember people telling my mom, like, oh, you're Rastafarian, like you're Rasta because you're vegan. And so they conflate the two, and
Right.
this is just like the Caribbean mentality, and it's not necessarily like a hateful kind of like a slur. It's just like this is what
Thing
we
to say.
identify these
Right.
two
Right.
things as. So if you are vegan, you must be Rasta, and so you do come from this place where it's just like
Right.
everybody eats everything that's available, and most people are, okay, but you do have vegans, and even though you're vegan, those vegans are mostly raw vegans because of what's available, because the country's not going to import vegan ice cream and vegan cheese for the smallest
Right.
population, and then those right, and then
The
also
six
those
people.
people are not necessarily going to
Right.
buy vegan cheese because they're not into
Uh-huh.
processed food, being from the Caribbean, and having the abundant food
Right.
source that they do for free. And so because of that
Right.
lifestyle, when she moved here, so that she was a raw vegan, and when she moved here she had all this like processed vegan food, and she ate ice cream like every day, and I was like, mom, you're so unhealthy. And she gained
Right.
weight. She gained like 10 pounds the first like couple of months she was here. And like she ate a lot of processed food, and that's kind of like the American plague. Like when I moved here, I ate a lot of processed food, like I mentioned earlier too. I was in high school, I'm coming home, I'm eating processed food, I'm going to school, I'm eating processed food. There's processed food in the lunchroom because that's what we get served. And I
Mm-hmm.
come from a Caribbean island where we eat pilau for lunch, which is like a rice dish. It's
Mm-hmm.
a heavily seasoned
Right.
meat and rice dish. And I'm used to that. I'm used to having mashed potatoes and gravy and real food like that. The cook starts at like 8 in the morning, 9 in the morning. They start cooking,
In the
and
morning.
um, and so I'm
Right. So it's the overconsumption of not just processed foods, but
all
probably
of
excess
that.
calories too, because obviously, depending on how much your body requires and how much you're kind of utilizing it in a day, there is a shift. There is a known shift that when people kind of come into America, there's that westernization that happens, and the slowing down of things too. People are much, I think, more active
Probably on a
outside
day
of
to
here,
on a very like day-to-day
and
basis. Yeah.
yeah, on the day to
Like we go to school. Yeah, go
yeah.
ahead.
But Dana, can I Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. I was going to say, can we, because I'm so interested in
I
getting
know,
to
I
like a
know.
day
I'm
in the
like
life of you right
I
now. I know, like we said, we're
mm-hmm.
in a pandemic and it's okay. It's okay. No, it's okay. I just want to make sure that we don't forget that I want to learn a little bit more. So I'll let you finish what you're talking about with the vegan transition there. And then if you don't mind, share a little bit about like what a day in the life of you is right now. Maybe not food related. Like what is it that you're doing, and any routines that I always kind of call them like the non-negotiables, anything that you do to keep yourself happy and at peace, especially in a state that we're in right now, not just with the pandemic, but also there's been a lot of racial tension specifically in the last weeks. I mean, in the last 400
Right.
years, but specifically in the last two weeks. So there's been a lot going on. And the reason why I think I'm interested in learning about the current you is because that does take a toll
Absolutely.
on people's health and wellness. Like, is that triggering things for you? Are you feeling a little bit emotionally wrought in certain things? So do you mind sharing a little bit about kind of like, what's going on in your life these days or currently, this week, or
Yeah. So
however
I'm gonna
current you want to
finish
be
up
about it?
your other question that I never ever
Yeah.
answered. And
Yeah.
and then I'll
That's
jump right into
okay.
that. And so just going into like
Yeah.
how I transitioned from being like a everything eater to a very specific picky eater. Um I when I moved out, I've lived on my own for about 4 or 5 years now. And when I moved out, so when I came back after being 18 with my mom, my whole dairy was shot. Like I was not having dairy in my diet
Mm,
anymore, and I really missed yogurt. And then
right.
after I moved out at like 20 or 21, and that was only a few years later. I would come home after work. I used to go to work and I used to go to school. I worked two jobs and I went to school. And so I'm coming home, right. I'm coming home really
Oh my
late,
gosh.
and and I'm like defrosting meat, and I'm like trying to make a dish at like 9 p.m. so that I can get into bed by like midnight so I can like go to
Right.
sleep by 2 a.m., and do my day all over again. And so at some point it did become a toll for me to defrost meat. That was really what it was for me. It became like too much. I couldn't come home and defrost meat. And so I have pets, and I can't leave stuff in my sink, which is, you shouldn't do that all day anyway. And I didn't want to leave raw meat out in the
Right, right,
like the bottom
right.
of my fridge to defrost during the day. Like, I was very like conscious about that. And
Hmm,
so
hmm.
I was like, okay, if I can't defrost meat, then I'll just do fish. Fish is much easier. And so I went to BJ's and I got like a bunch of like filleted fish. And on the occasion, on the weekends, maybe I'll cook meat when I'm up. And this is just like animal protein in terms of like land animals. And then I would have it when I went over to family's house.
Right,
And so I didn't cut it out of my diet. I just stopped cooking it. And then one day
right.
at my office, I ordered a burger for lunch. And I smelled it and I was like, oh, this smells terrible. Like, something must be wrong with it. And at this point I was like I said, going to
Right.
school and working all day and like just doing that for like weeks and weeks on end. So I'm eating fish and I'm eating vegetables and I'm eating all of these other things that are not meat. And so like when I ordered this burger, I thought it was like terribly, like I thought it was spoiled. And so I asked my coworker, I was like, hey, can you smell this burger and tell me if it's okay? And she's like, this smells delicious. I don't know what you're talking about. And I was like, this is crazy.
Ah, so your
Right. Yes.
senses
And so
changed
I had
in
like
that
this
case.
moment of like,
Yeah.
okay, I can't eat red meat anymore. And so I cut pork out of my diet. I had done that for a while.
Hmm,
Like especially in America, like in the food production here,
hmm.
I just eat pork when I go home because I know it's locally grown and the pigs are taken care of. And like, I prefer that and I trust that meat industry more. And so at that
Hmm.
point, I had cut pork out of my diet already. And then at that junction where I had that burger, I was like, okay, well, red meat has to go now. And so I'm eating poultry still. And this is like strictly chicken. I wasn't having, I think, yeah. And then I had an encounter with duck in Chinatown. So I love duck. I love, love, love duck. It's so salty and good, right? And I ordered duck. I took my friend to Chinatown and I was like treating her and I was like, let me get some duck. And it made me feel terrible. I wasn't like, it didn't smell horrible to me or anything. I was eating it. And then like I had a reaction to it. Like my
You had
tummy
a
was
reaction.
in an upset about it. And I was like, okay, so I can't have that anymore. Um and then I had a winter solstice party. So I am non-denominational. Well, I'm non-religious, I should say. I'm very spiritual though, so I'm very like inclined to celebrate the seasons and changes in the weather and moon cycles and things like that. But I don't celebrate
Hmm.
like religious celebrations necessarily, especially Christian religious celebrations. And so I do have a winter solstice
Sure.
party, which I threw with my friends, and I made everybody wings for that. Like I made a bunch of different things, and some plant-based meals, and also like some wings. And I tried to eat the wings, and I was like, oh no, I had a headache. I was like, maybe it was too salty. Maybe something happened. Like I was all of these things and I was having this terrible reaction. And so at that point I was like, okay, I can't eat meat anymore. And then I slowly, slowly, slowly started taking, I didn't want to cook fish anymore. Shrimp, the texture of shrimp in my mouth was
Yeah.
messing with me. Like how shrimp pops in your mouth. It was just like when you bite into it, that was messing with me. I just couldn't experience that texture anymore. Um, never like made an active choice to cut anything out of my diet other than really like dairy. And that was
Hmm,
kind of forced by my mother, like that was like, oh, well, we have all this other stuff. You don't need to get into dairy.
hmm, hmm.
And so I grew out of dairy, but
Right.
I had aversions to everything else, all the other meat in my life. And so, that's how I kind of operated with that. So yeah, a day in the life of me now. It's in terms, I know like you said non-specifically about food, but I am going to touch a little bit about my food journey.
Hmm.
It's a little tougher since Lehman College is closed. I can't get fresh food there. I think they do actually allow students to pick up or do a box or something now. They've developed that since the quarantine, but initially I couldn't do that. The botanical gardens is still closed.
Right.
Supermarkets lines are out the door. You can't order anything off of Whole Foods because the wait period is for days and days. Even ShopRite, you can't order anything for like they don't deliver for like a week or two.
Yeah.
And so it's been very challenging trying to find fresh fruits and vegetables. and just acquiring them, like not even finding them, but being able to purchase and bring them home. Like that's been a journey. So that's just like my food journey now.
Right, because you're not one to sit there and just like, let me stock my fridge full of heat and eat items in the, frozen section or anything like that. You really do thrive on the more natural whole
Exactly.
products. So that is very challenging. That is very challenging right now with what's going
Absolutely.
on.
And so what I've tried to do is, regrow things from cuttings, and
Hmm.
beans grow really fast. Even though beans you can kind of source and stock, that you can keep, because
Right.
beans, if you buy dry beans, then you're fine. Um, but generally speaking, yes, like my tomatoes take forever to grow. So like it's like, am I gonna really grow a tomato vine? Like yeah. So it's just been very taxing finding that. But I've been gardening. That's part of my quarantine life.
Okay.
Um, Generally speaking, it's been very it's been very warm to do that for myself, because it reminds me
Hmm.
of my grandmother who, like I said, raised me for a good part of my life, and she also recently passed away. So
Oh.
it's part of that for me. It's part of returning home in a way.
Yeah. I
Um,
love how you said that too. The warmness, the feeling of warmth.
yes.
And yeah, I like that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's just it does bring me warmth, because it brings me joy and nostalgia. And I think
Hmm.
that in itself is warm. And so planting, being able to grow something, outside of myself, something that requires attention outside of myself, it allows me to remember that
Right.
I'm part of, I'm not existing by myself. I can attribute to
Yeah.
growth, and even something so small, in the time where we're all isolated, or we're all like frustrated because of whatever's going on. It's
Right.
important to remember that we are part of a bigger picture, and we can contribute in any way, even if it's growing one plant, you know.
Right.
And so
The world dynamic, like you're part of this earth, which is
absolutely.
that's such a wonderful way to find something positive and all of this stuff that is kind of mentally challenging on all and physically challenging on a lot of us too, to find that nice little, nugget of hope and kind of writing that out in that way. That's very, very sweet how you worded that.
Thank you. So yeah, even like,
Yeah.
and it requires me to like take time out every day to water, because I have some plants that like my bamboo doesn't require water
Right.
for like 2 months, and then I have like some plants that need to be watered like twice a day. And so it also like reminds me, like I have to contribute to something outside of myself, and I have to pay attention to it.
Hmm.
And I have pets, so that was always there. It's always like, but my pets will remind me like, hey, you need to feed me.
Yes.
You've been working for 10 hours. Hello.
Yeah.
But
Can't necessarily ignore your furry
my,
children.
right, my fur babies. And so, yeah, so plants require me to actively remember that there's more than just myself. So I've
Hmm.
been doing that. I started like a little mini cooking show for my family.
Aw.
Yeah, because I have family all over the world, and I communicate with a lot of them, and so they are all like, "Hey, how are you? Are you okay? Like, and you're in the epicenter of all this stuff. Are you like, what's
Yes.
going on? Are you healthy? And so, I do my cooking show, and it's on WhatsApp. It's not public at all. And I was thinking about doing it public, but yeah, I do that to keep up with them, and so they all know like I'm plant-based and I'm vegetarian. And
That is so cool.
yeah, so that's something I do, and I only do it
Wait,
like,
I have to interrupt one sec because you have to explain to me because I'm an old person. How do you create a cooking show on WhatsApp? Isn't WhatsApp like a texting
yeah, so you
platform?
can actually, and this is not pretty recent, but it's fairly recent. It's They have this part of WhatsApp where you can post statuses, and you can post
Okay.
videos, you can post pictures, and so it's not a live cooking show in the sense that they can't
Oh,
actively watch
okay.
me while I'm doing it. I have
Got
to like
you.
upload videos basically, and
So this is kind of their version of, I guess, like the Instagram stories
yes,
section, but it
absolutely.
stays there forever or it goes away after a certain time.
Yeah,
And
so
that's okay.
yeah, actually,
That's
so
so
it
fun.
is.
I'm sorry you have to explain to me
No,
what
no,
WhatsApp
no,
is.
absolutely. I'm sure you're not the only person that's gonna be like, what is she talking about
What
either?
is that? That's so cool. Right.
Yes,
I
so
understand what you're talking about though, like uploading videos and creating that interactive experience for all of the people who are not all awake at the same time. If your family's all over the world and they can kind
exactly.
of watch you, in
And
action.
I'm also like a
Um,
night owl, right? So I'm like cooking at maybe
yeah.
like midnight or 10 p.m. and and I have like family who have, they have children or whatever, and their children
Mm-hmm.
have WhatsApp because they have phones, and so they like to watch my videos too. And if they're in bed by
That
8
is
because they still have
so
school,
fun.
they can still watch my video
Right.
the next day. And so I've also hosted private cooking extravaganza with someone I knew. So I do that as well, like on Zoom, where we'll
Yeah.
pull up Zoom and we'll cook together. And so
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. And that's a great way for me to maintain time with my family in a non-direct way.
Right.
Um, but going into something that I cannot, like, I don't remember the term you used, but like something I don't give, like I can't give up,
Oh, the
like something,
non-negotiables, your
the
non-negotiables.
non-negotiables. There you
Yeah.
go. So, I do yoga almost every day. That is like so I sleep on the floor, and I know people like associate that with like poorness, but it's actually really good for your mind and your body to
Hmm.
really sleep on. Like I have my mattress, of course, and it's a memory
Right.
foam mattress, but I sleep on the floor, and I feel very comfortable being so close to the ground. I don't know why. I've had a bed
Which
frame
makes
my whole
sense.
life.
It makes sense because like you just said, you kind of are an earth mama there. You enjoy being grounded in that way to have that connection. So that totally makes sense that you want to
Oh,
be
thank you.
as close as
I'm
possible.
stealing that term, Earth
Yeah.
Mama.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, so I do sleep on the floor, and I kind of literally roll out of bed and I wake up to the sun, and I look at my plants, and I kind of give honor to my room, and I have lots of space in my room, and
Mm.
so I have carpet where I do my yoga, and I turn it on, and I do my yoga every morning. Sometimes I go live on Instagram, and
Hmm.
sometimes I don't. And my morning isn't necessarily 9 a.m. or 6 a.m. It's like whenever I wake up. And we've all been having crazy sleep schedules because of the
Right.
quarantine. But I do like that is no matter what time I wake up, that is my non-negotiable. I get up, I do my yoga, and then I'll go grab breakfast. I'll have tea with that and really have a moment um, of meditation and
Yeah.
relaxation and being present before I start my day. And I think that's very important.
That is
And
important. Like you said, even if even if time is irrelevant right now, to kind of have that little moment of silence to reflect or even, project like what you are visualizing to be a successful day for yourself or to be honoring the fact that you are still here and just having a second to, give yourself that time before whatever your day is. If it's going to be busy or boring or whatever is going to happen, at least you have that moment of your own self there to kind of reflect on. I love that,
yes,
Dana.
yes, thank
That's
you.
so sweet.
Yeah.
Is there before we start, we're going to kind of start wrapping up here. But I was going to
Yes.
say if there's anything else you want to add to that. If not, I want to kind of get an idea of what the future you looks like because you have shared with me in our own private conversations some of your hopes and dreams and things that you are looking to do, once you're done with your degree or once you are of a certain age. So tell us a little bit about that too if you want to.
Yeah. So, I'm just gonna wrap up like
Yes,
talking about what I look like now. And
do
so
it.
this month has been particularly challenging, and I think that's for everybody all over the world, no matter what
Hmm.
color and shade you are.
Hmm.
It's because of all of the systematic like movements and changes that we're having right now, and all of the grassroots movements that we're having right now. And um, I've been personally, and my partner has come to join me from California as well. We've been personally like on the streets,
Yeah.
marching and protesting, and getting people to sign petitions and calling local offices, and really trying to like affect change.
Yes.
That's been part of what we've been doing now. And so, and for more information, people can definitely find me on Instagram. But there's just like a lot. That's what I've been doing, and this is also Pride Month, and so I've currently been planning like some virtual Pride events to host. Like I mentioned, like I
Hmm.
have family all over the world, so I really want to
Hmm.
encompass them. And I work like on top of all of that, I work
Right.
as a virtual assistant essentially at this point because I can't go anywhere.
Right.
And I started to open and create my own company. I've just partnered with two other people who are very like passionate about the vision. And this kind of like leads into your next question of what the future
The
looks like for
future.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we've been kind of plotting about what this looks like because we have a lot of local business owners who are A, struggling, or B, going completely out of business, or who are trying to get into business because things are now becoming like real estate is becoming cheaper and things like that.
Hmm.
And so we want to be, virtual assistants and whatever capacity they need, which could go from accounting to just sorting paperwork, like office management, because of our various degrees and our various trainings. Um, we are trying to build that, and we want to reach out to like minority owned businesses or small businesses, and offer that service to them. Like some people they're not able to like hire a full-time employee, but they still
Right.
need admin work done, and we're here for that. If you need us 4 hours of the week or whatever. And so I've been working on that with my coworkers, my partners. We've been working on that really hard, and for this month. And so this month has just been a lot of activism, a lot of like positive,
Yeah.
enlightening work. And so that's what right now looks like for me.
That is so cool because you're out again with the taking the opportunities of not kind of going down a downward spiral in what could be considered the darkest times of all right now, that you are coming out of it with saying, I still have plans, and you're making a business for yourself. A lot of people are struggling with, financial hardships and stuff, but there is an opportunity if you have kind of, I guess, the ideas and the wherewithal, or, the resources, perhaps like you are fortunate to have a group of people who are also supporting each other too in that way. So to know that there is business opportunities out there. So not all is lost just because some people might be out of jobs, that other jobs might be available, and you can hopefully, go and find those things or market yourself that people can find you.
Yes, absolutely. And so that also was something that happened organically by accident, but and I don't want to really get into that too much, but
Sure.
we, like I just in this that came out of frustration. So I don't want to like um I don't want
Mm-hmm.
anybody to misunderstand what's really happening for me, because I don't want, like I'm not like just like, oh, let's all be productive. Like I'm
Right.
not, that's not my message at all, because I did have like
Understood.
especially during the quarantine, like I had like a whole like maybe like 2 weeks where I was like not getting out of bed, not doing
Mm-hmm.
anything, ordering takeout every day, just because
Mm-hmm.
like I couldn't like cook. I didn't want to cook. I wasn't cleaning.
Function.
Yeah, like I was like
Right.
super dysfunctional. And so
Yeah.
um I walked myself out of that. And part of that was buying plants and saying like, okay, well, if I'm not going to get up every day for myself, I have to get it for my plants. I have to get it for my
Right.
pets, And so part of that was um, just, just like learning how to restructure my life in this new place. And
Mm-hmm.
even going out to protest, I was frustrated. And that's why I sat in Fordham. It was literally me and my partner. My mom later joined us, and it was two of us literally yelling in
Mm-hmm.
Fordham Plaza, just like at people saying, hey, sign the petitions. And we had so much feedback. And that was so
Mm.
rewarding for me, because my frustration then turned into positive action, you know?
Exactly.
And yeah. And so like, it's okay, to feel like whatever you're feeling, just
Mm-hmm.
move with it.
Mm-hmm.
And like, or at least plan to move with it, like if
Right.
you're stuck for 2 weeks, then at some point you have to make a plan to like then say, okay, I've taken some time to relax,
Process
or
and
to, yeah,
right.
to process, to
Mm-hmm.
do whatever, to find some function. And then if it, even if it's like I said, rolling out of bed and doing yoga every day, just try to do something that will help you. I started doing quarantinis with my friends, which required me to literally just take a bottle of wine out of my fridge and sit on my bed and play music. Like I
Right.
was like, let's all do this. Let's all join in on Zoom and drink and be merry. We have nothing else to
Right.
do. And so, yeah. And so like you just need some type of positive action, like feel how you feel. Absolutely. But
Right.
you need to move at some point. And even if it's out of frustration, move. And so because I've done that movement, and everybody's movement will be at whatever time they need to do it at. But because I've done that movement, I am now here where people are texting me like, hey, do you want to come volunteer for this? Do you want to do that? And I find
Mm-hmm.
myself like my schedule is just being packed and packed. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
just like, oh no, I want to go back to laying in my bed. And but you do need to just like find some balance. And so of course it can quickly go from like nothing to something, and or to
Exactly.
everything.
All or
And it's
nothing.
just,
Right.
yeah, and it's just about maintaining balance. And sometimes you need help with that. Sometimes you need to
Yeah.
talk to somebody to find out what's the best mechanism to balance, or what I need to balance as a specific person. And I'm just lucky to have a great support system, which includes you.
Oh, thanks.
And so like I'm just very fortunate to just live the life that I do. And so that's where I'm kind of at right now. And like I said, looking forward, I have my business. I do have a business opportunity in London, which I do want to pursue. And that's where I'll be moving soon.
So cool. Oh,
Yes, I think so.
wow. That is
I
so
think that's
cool.
really cool. I'm very excited to do that. I'm very concerned, of course, still about like all the safety issues.
Right.
Um,
Obviously. Yeah.
Presently, I'm doing a lot of activism work, which I hope to continue, and I really love what I am doing right now. I feel really great doing it.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, a selfish reason to do it, but also like a very impactful thing to do. So I am very excited to continue being an activist no matter where I go and to build something possibly that people can use. And I think part of my business is like that, you know, like I want to help business owners who are being impacted at this time. And so that's part of like where my future lies. I'm a very
Right.
helpful, hopeful person. With my political science degree, I do want to be a lawyer at some point. So I do want to continue my career, my education,
Mhm.
with law school, because that's the next step for me.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'm necessarily going to put it on hold for England, because I may just do online schooling, or I may go to law school in England, depending on how much like what money looks like.
Right.
But that's where I am. I just want to continue to travel and be the best version of myself and give as much as I can, because so much has been given to me, you know, and that's just
I
how we live. That's how we revolve around each other.
you're correcting me up the words that you just said because I literally just wrote down honoring her true self.
Oh, yeah,
And that, yeah,
absolutely.
and that is something that, again, the fact that, it might seem outwardly sometimes that we're all happy-go-lucky, very creative souls, very open, making people feel comfortable around us, but we do have our own issues to deal with. And it's okay, like you said, it's okay to process that. It's okay to take time and shut down for a bit. And at some point, just like your true self with food, you also know your true self with emotions that I have to kind of step out and take a shower and go outside and talk to humans, and because this could go down very deep if that's not maybe tended to in that way. But then to be compassionate with yourself too. I think that comes up a lot too in some of these conversations I've been having, to kind of allow yourself the ability to feel and break and feel broken, and then come out of that in some way with saying, I've learned. And now also in different respects too, with the activism and the business stuff, you're also looking to share and grow with teaching other people too. So that's something that has kind of also been a theme with some of the other guests as well, where we've all had some sort of health and wellness journey of our own, whatever chronic condition we were fighting. But now it puts us in a better state and frame of mind to be able and to be open to people who are actually trying to find us. And that's also one of the reasons why I do this podcast, because I don't rely on people who are following me. I want you to manifest your audience through this discussion of who can hear your message and your mission and really have like that connection with what you're saying. And
Thank
so
you.
yeah, so this is why I love having everybody on this platform, because it's your story that you're telling, and somebody might out there connect with it and say, holy cow, that's kind of how I'm feeling or what I'm going through. And
Yeah.
everything that you've shared so far is just so pure and honest, and I'm so grateful. So if it's okay on that note, I don't want to cut you off again. I just want to put out there, is there anything that you like, final words before we start wrapping up? Because I do have a couple more questions, and then we're gonna wrap it up if it's okay.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
yeah, I think I've answered everything that you've asked so far, if I'm not, if I'm correct. And so I just want to like extend a thank you to you
Yes.
for providing this platform, of
Aw.
course, because of like there would be no person to relate to me if there was no one to hear, you know, what I had to say. And so you're a
Right.
huge part of that as well. And like I said, a huge part of my personal growth and my health and wellness growth. And
Thank you, Dina.
just generally speaking, we check in, and I appreciate you so much. So
Thanks.
yeah.
Well, let's share who you are. Are you available publicly online? You said you're on Instagram a lot, and you also have a business pursuit. Can people find you somewhere? How could they connect with you if they want to learn more about
Absolutely.
you?
So I am a poet by trade. No, not by trade. By right. By
Right.
passion. I'm a poet. My poetry Instagram is Rohani is Truth. Rohani is my Indian middle name. So that's
Hmm.
Rohani. is truth, truth. And so you can
Mhm.
find me there. And you can also find like all of my activism, my latest activism work on there. And um, just generally, that's the best way to contact me for
Okay.
public reasons. Or rouhaniistruth@gmail.com.
Okay.
My
I will put this in like the little notes underneath the episode, so there'll be hyperlinks
Oh,
so people can
great.
click on it and all. Yeah, yeah,
Thank
absolutely. So
you.
just in case anybody didn't hear the spelling or whatever, I'll make sure that I'm linking to all this stuff.
Awesome. And thank you. And then like my business is called The Pencil Pusher. And so that also has its own Instagram, and I'll send you the spelling of that, but it is The
Okay.
Pencil Pusher.
The
Yes.
THEE as in the right, right, right. Okay, that's cool.
Thank
Well,
you.
Dana, before we actually do finally wrap up, what is, pun intended, on your plate today? What are you planning on eating when we're done? And also, what are you working on right now as far as, your next, as soon as we hang up, whatever you're doing today?
Okay. So I actually have my breakfast still sitting next to me because I didn't eat it at all. But I made a what do you call it? Home fries. I made
Yeah.
a what we call ground food in the Caribbean, which is, food that comes from the ground. A
Mm-hmm.
ground food,
Like root vegetables and things like
yes,
that. Yeah.
home fry. So I did that.
Mm.
I seasoned it with cumin and all that good stuff. There's beets in here. There's sweet potatoes, which is the Caribbean sweet potatoes are actually red on the outside and white on the inside, and they're not
Mm.
they're known as batata in like some Hispanic Caribbean countries.
Yeah.
Um, and that I eat that instead of potatoes, instead of like the white potatoes. Like I prefer them. They're just sweet though. They're very sweet.
Right.
And I did throw some cabbage in here and carrots.
That sounds so yummy. Like nice a hearty meal. A lot of
Yeah.
good flavors
And
going on
that's
in there.
because I literally was like, I have to go grocery shopping to first of all. And secondly,
Is this a clean out the
yeah,
pantry
it's
type
kind of
of
like
meal like you
whatever's
said?
in
Yeah.
there, just throw it in the pan type thing.
Right.
And then for later, I'm making a lasagna, a vegan, oh, well, a
Ooh,
vegetarian lasagna because it
that's
will have cheese.
right.
Um,
Hmm.
and I'll have probably some peas in there, like some green, I'm sorry, not peas, beans. I'll have some beans, like,
Hmm.
beans in there. I will probably use, I just use a lot of vegetables for my sauce.
Hmm.
And then I layer that with like the pasta and the cheese.
That sounds
And yeah,
delightful.
it's killer. I've made it for like years now, and everybody eats it. Like when I make it, they just love like that dish. Um,
And that's another way that you're honoring things too, right? Like you're taking something of yourself and you're sharing it with others. And that's
Absolutely,
something,
absolutely.
yeah.
And I'm not like, like I said, like I'm not here to tell people like what exactly not to eat and things like that, but I am like,
Right.
hey, try this, like
Try this.
this is
Exactly. Let me
yummy.
share.
Yes. And
Hmm.
so that's how I influence and interact with food and friends, like I'm very
Hmm.
much like when you come to my house, like we're vegetarian here. So you're gonna have to, and I've never had a complaint. Like my friends always come over and I throw parties and well, I used to throw parties and I have lots
Yes.
of friends over and like they're eating walnuts with their quinoa and their like cold salad and they're like, this is great.
Right.
And they treat it like a treat because that's what it is. They're not used to getting like that kind of meal.
Hmm.
And so I value them for that too. Like they're very open to things I cook and they're very like they let me know like, oh, this needs this or this doesn't taste well or whatever. So I love
Right.
my friends for that. And last but not least, the thing that I'm gonna go do now is
Yeah.
eat my breakfast. But I have some work today, and then I have a Hindi class because I am learning a language. I'm being cliche
Okay.
during the quarantine and learning a language.
Are you also making banana bread? Because
I
then
did
that would
that
be
already. I
completely,
did that
you did.
already. I actually bought some bananas to give out to like homeless people, and I didn't like there was
Yeah.
nobody to give them to when I did go like that day. And so they ended
Yeah.
up staying in my house, and like I was like, I'm just gonna, and I hate bananas. I mentioned that earlier, and avocados, but I will eat a
Right. The
banana
mushy stuff.
bread.
Yeah.
I will eat a banana
Mm-hmm.
bread, but
Mm-hmm.
it can't have like
Yeah.
chunks of
Different.
banana in it. I just can't do that. Mm-mm.
So, okay, so that sounds quite a lot literally on your plate. I mean, right now it's mid-afternoon, so I'm very impressed that you've had breakfast sitting out for that long, but you remind me of me. I tend to graze. I don't know if you conscientiously do that or not, but I tend to graze. And so I'll sometimes be like, oh my gosh, it's lunchtime already and I
Right,
still haven't finished my breakfast. So I guess I have 2 meals at 2 o'clock.
right.
Um, Dana, it has been such a pleasure because we, in our finite amount of time spent together in our conversations, in sessions, on campus, really didn't get to know each other as much as we have now. So I'm really so grateful that you spent some time with me today, that you shared your story with whoever is out there who will hopefully listen to this. And I absolutely wish you the ultimate best in all of the things that life has to offer to you in the future, whatever that means, whether it's tomorrow, the days to come, in the years, and so on. And I really, really hope that we will always be keeping in touch from this point forward.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. And of course, we'll talk after this, but I just, thank you so much for allowing me this space and this platform to share my story and my journey and to share with me what you have as well about yourself and for us building our relationship, right? So like you
Indeed,
mentioned, so thank
indeed.
you so much.
Yeah. Thanks, Dana.
Mhm.
Okay, my dear, have a good rest of the day, and we will talk again
Yes,
soon.
thank you.
Okay,
Okay, bye.
bye. Thank you so much for joining me this week on the Dish with Dina podcast. I am Dina D'Alessandro, registered dietitian, nutritionist, founder, and chief executive life changer at Dish with Dina, and I'm also your host. If you like what you heard, I would be so grateful if you could subscribe to this podcast, leave a review, and share this with others who you think might benefit from what we have to offer on these episodes. You can also join my mailing list at dishwithdina.com or email me at info@dishwithdina.com with questions, comments, feedback, and if you'd like to be a guest on a future episode, because everybody eats and we all have a story to share. I hope you tune back in next week when we dish again.